Hello, everybody. Chef Marcus Guiliano here. Welcome to In the Weeds, episode number 34. We're going to talk restaurant tales, successes, failures, all about the restaurant industry. Today, I have a gem with me today. I've got Kristjan Kristjansson today from Canada, a real gem. Known Kristjan many years and love what he's doing. I've never been to your place, though, bro, and I at some point when traveling gets better, I need to come up there and visit you. You've been to the U.S. many times. We've hung out many times in the U.S. But Kristjan, say hello, introduce yourself, and let's have a conversation.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you, Marcus. What a pleasure. Great to be here in the weeds with you. I know that motion and that feeling where that word comes from in our industry for sure. I've felt it a few times. So Kristjan Kristjansson, originally born in Iceland. Family was a restaurant hotel family there, moved to Canada, actually the U.S. in the early 70s, 71. My father went to college in University of Minnesota, and then in Grand Forks for a few years. He quickly went from being a student to being a student professor, being that he was a European trained guy in the early 70s. Got bought up by original gig was to go to Australia with the Marriott hotel chain. But a wonderful group in Minnesota bought him up and kept him. And they went to start a steakhouse chain in that part of the U.S. He couldn't get immigration status because of the Vietnam War, and so he ended up in Canada. And so the first restaurant of that group was in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, which is where I now live and where my restaurant is. And that is that's a long time ago. Now the building that I'm in today, the building that I purchased around 2012, is the building that my dad put his very first restaurant in. And it's a great conversation because, we talk about, the future and sometimes it's the past that's in the way and it's hard to step out of the past. And so our restaurant, which was built in 73, so in the late 90s, it went through a renovation. Just I think the writing on the wall of that industry. I mean, there are wonderful steakhouses everywhere. We all love them. In Winnipeg, there were 4 or 5 pretty good steakhouses. We were in the top for a long time. But our building was getting old. It needed a large investment. The beef industry was going crazy, product costs all over the place. And my father was retiring. My father had about 20 restaurants in his best of times, a really great local chain that he created, sold it later. And so I personally wasn't really a part of his chain outside of saying I bartended a couple times and a few things as a kid. But I was always there watching that experience. And I ended up coming back. My background was telecom, technology, sales. So we had a telephone business in Manitoba for many years. And when we sold it, I became a director at Auto Trader. And in my exiting of that print world, I went to help my dad for a little while so he could sell the original restaurant, which was at the time called the Roundtable Steakhouse. And that process was difficult because honestly, at that point, the restaurant was 40 plus years old. It needed another renovation. Ceilings were probably a touch low for that look. To renovate a steakhouse in 2000s, 2010s, you weren't doing a lipstick on a pig. You were doing a multi-million-dollar full upgrade because you were going to start to go for the $60, $70 steaks. And as prices were starting to rock, and I remember, prime rib dinners at the Round Table were $16. When I left, they were almost 30 something. And we knew they were going to climb into the 40s and 50s and that product would, unfortunately kind of price itself out. And that's exactly kind of what happened. It's an interesting emotional process to decide to take a restaurant chain because, inevitably the Roundtable Steakhouse was the catalyst to us coming to Canada, being in the restaurant business. And even for myself to go into the restaurant business, it was the catalyst because it was at a point where it was struggling. My background is business development, so growing business is what I do. And we grew it by almost 30%, but the margins just weren't there. The cost to grow an old concept, to try to reintroduce it to a younger demographic. Attrition takes 3% of your customers away every year if your customers are in the senior category. And so you are not only just trying to find new customers all the time, but you have to consider that 3% loss every year. And so the steakhouse business really does focus on a more financially, a better income category, an age, a certain type of person. And today, Wow. Could you even pick 5 people under the age of 30 that would all want a steak in a room? I mean, it would be quite a process nowadays, right?
Sure is.
With all the other, yeah, and all the other food challenges of gluten and so on. Understandably, I mean, people have become very intelligent to what they're eating. They understand food much better than what we did. I mean, you know, we ate click. Don't get me wrong. I had Spam a little while ago. I did it as a joke out of a can, you know, and that sound that reminded me of 1975. Never to be done again. So, yeah, the steakhouse business clearly had writing on the wall. It was a time to commit. It was either to go commodity pricing or to stay high end.
All right, great. So you're making, I hate to interrupt you because you're on a roll. You're on a roll here. So I mean, so the hotel, the restaurant business is in your family for years. Your father, I mean, this is a natural fit for you. You veer off, you go into telecommunications, you go work for Auto Trader, you veer off. What brought you back into the business? You said you were coming back to help your father sell the steakhouse.
Yeah.
But that's not what happened. Where was the turning point in that selling to running it and taking it over? Or did he sell it to you? Or did he sell it to you?
Okay, so that's a good question. So 2010, I show up, January 2010. By 2012, I look at him and I say, look, you know, and one of my advantages is that, of course, I have a love for food. I'm not a chef like you, but up against, you know, 100 chefs, I'm easily in the middle of that pack. And so my background has always been around the kitchens. I've loved it. And so what happened was I had this food interest. And so when I was with Auto Trader, I was traveling to the biggest cities around North America, having an opportunity to go to the coolest places, trying the most high end to the most interesting. And I'm a total fan of locally owned. So when I travel, I really hunt for that, and I always have. And I think it's because I also sense a certain simplicity, maybe an overly oversimple program around a lot of the chains. So, you know, it loses its luster quickly for me. Although there's lots of good chains out there. Although I'd rather the locals win. So at that point, I look at my dad and I said, look, you know, this has probably got to happen. You need to sell this. There's nobody going to give you any real money. So the real response here is that I would be willing to take it over, buy it for, you know, not a lot of money, but I won't do it unless I own the land, because it's a 8,000 square foot building on somebody else's property. And I'm going to drop $2.5 million in. I need to know that in 5 years, my rates are through the roof and they're just going to keep beating me up, right? I also was thinking a lot about, if I'm going to get into this, how long am I in it and how do I get out? And so that, because I wasn't really thinking restaurant future, although I love it, there's lots of aspects of it. But I, as a kid, always felt that the restaurant industry was tough on our family just because of the hours and all those things. And that's not actually an accurate statement, because I think it's a choice more than it is an industry. And there are better ways, right? Better ways to run your business than to let it run you. And so here nor there at that time, right? So I ended up looking at him and said, well, listen, here's the deal. We know the landlords. My dad wasn't able to buy the land when it became available. It had originally been owned by CN because it's on the railroad tracks in Winnipeg. So they always owned it. And then one day it went for sale. And at that time, my father didn't buy the business or the land. And so I was able to buy it. So when I bought it at a very good rate. The people that owned it, it was a group. They were all kind of done. They're getting older. They were happy to dump it, take the cash, and go have fun. And so I bought the property. And with that, I took kind of a model. I took a model that I had worked on for my father and said, look, we're going to test it in the lounge. A lounge in the Roundtable was 135 seats. The restaurant was 300 seats, big place. And so I took the bar, and one of the challenges we were having was when the restaurant filled on a Friday, Saturday, the bar overflowed and the kitchen got destroyed every single weekend forever. And as the menus got more complicated, it got harder. You know, if we look at 1970, there were 8 items on the menu. Now there's 32, 35, 28. And so we took the bar off. We did not allow the steakhouse menu in there. We rebranded it, and we went into a gastropub model. I took, and this is 2012. I took all of the 2013-ish. I took all of the local domestic stuff off of the beer list. I carried one bottle, and I went full draft, 16 taps. And at that time, craft hadn't happened in where we were. It was it was a new word, and it was more European brewing, right? So we were bringing in more Belgian, more of that.
Have you put any money into the place besides new tap handles? You didn't do any major renovations yet, correct?
Yeah, no, I put in 250 grand into the bar.
Okay.
And I totally redid it. New furniture, new vibe, new feel. And it boomed. It went from being a $300,000 add-on, if you can imagine that, 136 seats, 300 grand a year, to $1.7 million the moment after we spent the 250.
In the bar alone.
Correct.
The bar alone. Wow.
That's right. Yeah. And I mean, there's one thing about being a business development guy. When you're looking at a diamond in the rough, you're going to be amazing at the beginning. It's the next couple of steps, obviously, right? So I went on, I was at zero really. And so to go from 300 grand and up, that wasn't going to be hard. But could I get that money back? Could I get the 250 back? And if I'm making 5 points on my money, that's a long time. And so I needed to get to a margin that made sense. And what happened was we created a problem, which was we suddenly created 2 menus, and we created a different kind of problem. We just got much busier. We grew the business overall by about 30%, but we could not get the young people in the building. It was tagged as the place your parents went, your grandparents went. So the brand, the Roundtable brand, was very dated, very, and to recover it at that point, that's an interesting thing to look at, because, I believe that every 7 years, your restaurant needs a facelift. It needs an update. It needs a fresh feel, color change, some furniture updating. It's an opportunity to just pop the menu. For sure, you're doing that more often, but every 7 years, if you miss multiple 7 years, you really are way behind. You're losing the demographics, and you don't notice it. And it's kind of the same thing as I say, you take a brand new awesome item, and Marcus, you're the master of these great items. You'll know that the item is amazing. You've created a dish that is for everybody, but within a week, your staff are like, it's not selling. And even, right? And you're like, no, just wait. It needs 6 months. And
that is such a great point. People open up for brunch and they're like 6 months later, oh, it wasn't working. They start doing, oh, it wasn't working. I'm like, first of all, how are you promoting it? Who are you telling? And 6 months, that's it. That's all you're giving it. And that's one of the biggest mistakes I see with people trying something new. And I'll watch restaurants go through 2 or 3 concepts in 2 years. I'm like, what are you this week? I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to expect there. And that kills your business, because once people start liking one thing and you're changing it all again, and then all of a sudden you change it again, people are like, they're confused by all this.
Yeah.
It's nice to make upgrades, but you're in it for the long haul, people. Long haul.
Agreed, because if you're going to chase trends, you're going to chase them forever, because you can't be a trendsetter. It's not set in our beautiful little towns around the world. It is set in New York City, and it's set in LA, and it's set in Paris, and in Milan, and then it bleeds out to us. By the time it gets to my little town in the middle of Canada, it's 7-8 years late, right? So trends are scary, and it's the same thing on the flip side. You create a terrible model, you're not going to pick up on it until 6-7 months, and you've proven to everybody you have a terrible model. And so I think 6 months is an important number. And so what happened was we realized that in going through the process of analyzing what we were doing, we'd come up with a great concept. We had fought through it, but what we did is we created a monster, which was that we did a lot of features. We did 5 features. They were called the Todays. They ranged from $5 to $50. There was a different category, so snack to app to kind of all sorts of different fun, playful food. It was very chefy, very cool, not foodie, chefy. This was, and I think that's another thing that's important to recognize, that if you're cooking the same stuff people are doing on Instagram, that's not the food that's selling in your restaurant. That's not the talent we're looking for. And that's not a discredit to the people that do it there. It's just that when you drive to a restaurant, you pull out your wallet, you sit down in a seat, and you got a team behind it, your expectations are higher. And so we found out that was true, that people wanted to spend money, they wanted to taste a new flavor, they wanted to hear about new ideas, they wanted to know in Winnipeg, wanted to know what people were doing in LA, they wanted to know what they were doing in New York State, and in New Orleans and all that, in Kansas City and France and Italy and Asia. And so we built this concept. It created a problem. We realized that our best option was actually to convert the entire restaurant to the bar. But
okay, so right now you're half gastropub and half steakhouse still, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Dining room seats are steakhouse still, and the bar's gastropub, and the bar's killing it right now.
Yeah,
correct? Killing it. Okay, so now how long did it take you to make up your mind to say, okay, let's do it all now?
Well, there were some challenges. There were some things going on, some opportunities we saw, and we thought, we're at a precipice. We have to choose. We're teetering on the pin here of which way this goes. And the biggest issue was who wanted to do it. And I didn't really want to do it. I didn't really want to be locked in a restaurant. I didn't really want to develop a new concept. But I had gotten myself into it by buying the place and then bought the business from my father. And that was probably the best thing I ever did because, I get a guy who's been at it for 65, 70 years as my greatest advocate invested because, we did this together. And so I just decided it had to happen. And I had looked at putting a condo there. I had looked at building all sorts of ideas to converting it to many things. And what I realized was based on my skill set, my family, I was not a developer. So to learn that on my one property was a bad idea because the odds of me even making money on my first development was pretty risky. And I would end up just kind of, floating it. And that's not what I would want to do. It needed to be a cash flow opportunity, right? I mean, that's what it was for. And I wasn't real estate rich. I wasn't at that time. And so it was important that whatever I did, it made money. So when we were done, we realized we had a steakhouse that had a good reputation, not great. It had a menu that was very difficult to expand on. Even to sell more fish was a challenge. I thought that was interesting. Pasta was not a thing. People came there for prime rib. And we were the largest prime rib sales for CAB in an independent restaurant in Canada. Wow. We sold so many prime ribs that there were nights where we would sell 20 logs. Like, of course, Christmas time. Can you imagine? I'd run a Alta Champ twice through the day, each time taking 6.5 hours to have enough holding in my CVAP for the evening. It was pretty amazing.
Wow.
And it was probably one of the best things because it also sped up my kitchen for many benefits. But today that's a tough gig with those prices that we're into. So now it was okay. Well, now you got to put the money together for the development. And what came of it was that the one issue I had was I was in 8,000 square feet. I had 460 seats in the existing restaurant. And there's no way that a concept in Winnipeg, Manitoba in 2015, whenever we're going to open, is going to be able to seat 400 people. That's just not going to happen. And so we knew that we needed to deal with square footage. And we are on a prime real estate location. We're paying big bucks for the square footage. Even if it's ours, I'm still paying the mortgage, still valued out at that price. So we realized that whatever we did, it had to make money per square foot. And so we were just in 2012, the rumblings that craft beer was going to be deregulated. And I call it that because they had established a taxing system that would keep the small breweries out because the Molsons and the Labatts negotiated those deals.
Right. And this is in Canada. I remember you and I having conversations how hard it was for you to get beer there. And you'd come to America and you'd be like, Marcus, what's good? What am I drinking? Let's do this. Sure. We can't get any of this in Canada. And I'm like, how do you run a restaurant without all these great beers?
I mean, think about it. Think of the Odells and the Stones and the Lagunitas, and there's just so many amazings. And we hadn't heard of anything, right? And that was the one advantage was that I had been in the U.S. much more. I'd been seeing you guys. I'd been going to Minneapolis. I'd been going to Colorado and to the West Coast. And exactly, that was kind of an amazing scene. It was so far ahead of us, though. It was crazy. I mean, you guys were pouring IPAs like they were all day long, and we thought there was soap in the beer. That's how big a gap we were. It was hilarious. And so what happened was we realized that the brewery part was really exciting. I went and did a research trip. I met with probably about 25 brewery owners, and I had 13 questions with them. And I sat down with them and I asked the 13 questions, and I got some amazing help from some amazing people. And I was in markets that didn't have to worry about if we were competitive or not. Most of them were in Vancouver or in Minnesota or in a few spotty locations through the US. And the information I got was amazing. The one thing, like you'll know, is that if you're going to buy a pre-cooked burger and you're going to buy a frozen bun and the cheapest cheese and pretend that you're making a cheeseburger, and I guess you could call it a cheeseburger, but that's got no love in it. And that's just for me. When I think of what we do, we're about freshness, organic if we can do it, all the things that are healthy and beautiful for our customers. So we dug into it. Well, the brewing world is the same, if not more. I mean, it's a big deal. The quality of water, the commitment, the reality of being unique. If I wake up every morning and I'm just going to steal every idea that Stone does down in California, well, I'm never going to get as good as them because there's no authenticity to it. And so it was a big deal because it needed a lot of love and passion. And so we made that commitment, and we didn't buy the cheapest junk. We bought the best equipment, and we bought the right size. We were really encouraged to buy small. They said, Kristjan, for you, and this will be the truth in the kitchen, is that committing to doing it many times versus, we have breweries that might brew once every 3 weeks because the systems are so big. And so they only brew every 3 weeks. Well, we brew every 3 or 4 days. And so in a year, our people are they know the handles on their pans, they really understand their equipment, and they know what a micro touch of some button does. And so we committed to that with great brewers, great people, great materials. And that was important because that knocked off 2,500 square feet of our building. It brought us into a really fun, elevated gastropub.
So you're now building a brewery. You're redoing the whole restaurant, and you're putting a brewery in the restaurant. So essentially, you're a brew pub. You're a brew pub. So now you said some really, really key points here. This is a great story because obviously many people will say they'll make many excuses of why their business isn't working, but they change nothing on it. And they're riding on the coattails of what they had in the 80s or the 90s or even 10 years ago, a decade ago. They're riding on those coattails. They don't understand why people aren't coming in. And the way we learn is through education, right? You educate yourself through conversation, which this is great because you visited 25 brewers and you had 13 scripted questions for all 25. So conversation, and you learn through observation. So you'd come to the US, you'd see what was happening outside of your own market. Because I got to tell you, people get lost in their own market and they can't think beyond the box. And they don't even know where the box ends, right? Because they don't know the outside world. And so education, conversation, and observation. So you employ all of those in your strategy there, which is brilliant, right? Not knowing that was it, but you had a plan, 13 questions, 25, and I'm sure you got very different answers from each person. In some cases, I'm sure some was the same, but I'm sure some was like, oh, interesting. Like I haven't heard that yet. Right.
That's so cool. But what was so amazing though? All the ones I went to, not all of them were the best breweries. Some of them were in the earlier phases and so on. What was consistent about the really good ones was that they were hard work, super clean, best product, best beer. Don't ever pour a beer that you wouldn't drink yourself. It was all about quality, cleanliness, all about the absolute golden rules. And some of them even said to me, hey, you're just some business dude with money. Don't waste your time. You're going to hurt our industry. Like I had people slap me basically by saying, you're not the guy that should be in this business. And that was the best conversation I got because same thing. If you're stuck in your old restaurant because you got there somehow, either it's family, attrition, whatever, it's the way it happened. You thought you were going to be a manager. Now you're the owner and it's eating you alive. You need to do exactly what we're talking about, which is you need to stare in the mirror and make a decision to push through. My brother says a saying, it is, while you're in it, stay at it. And that's the reality. It's not asking if you like it or not. It's you're in it. So be the best you can. and then make some new decisions and move forward, right?
Did that answer motivate you when they said stay out of the business?
It sure did. Yeah, there's a brewery in Minnesota, in Moorhead, Minnesota, called the Junk House. And it was a beautiful 3-barrel little system. He was super creative, really cool beer. And Aaron Jung looked at me and said, don't waste our time. If you're going to just be here thinking you're throwing money at it, there's enough bad breweries out there. We don't need any more. And I have to tell you, I was so perfectly insulted in the right way. And you can't defend me because his intention was true and honest. Mm-hmm. It was, sometimes being offended is the reality of that you're not hearing that you have a problem. And so, he was addressing that I could become the problem very easily by thinking that I would just buy a machine, put my money in it, it would spit out good beer and we would just do great. And so he was making it very clear to me that this was hard work. And that's what it was, right? There's just nothing easy about it. But the transition.
So now you're buying equipment. You put 2,500 square feet aside for this. You're doing a full renovation.
Yeah.
You're doing a whole makeover. So the building inside is not going to look the same when people walk in from before. How about the outside of the building, exterior?
I gutted the entire building to the studs.
Wow.
I left the sheeting on the studs in most cases, but I gutted everything from ceiling to roof to air system, electrical, everything came out of the building. Everything new went back in.
Including the bar you upgraded for $250,000. Everything.
I got thrown out. I got picked up and thrown in the upstairs of my barn here at home.
How did that feel? Tearing apart.
It felt really stupid, but it also felt like it was the right direction, no matter if it was stupid. I mean, at the end of the day, I paid $250,000, and I probably got some of that money back. But what I did get was an expensive lesson that I needed because I was not a restaurateur. I'm a business person. I understand how to move that dial, but I didn't know the business well enough. The other thing that I did do is I joined a platinum group of restaurateurs, and that also played a huge role in my ability to cut the umbilical cord of an old thinking. My father used to say, if you stand at the hostess stand all day long, you're going to learn more about your business. I was like, yeah, I don't really need to learn more about my business. I need to learn more about the market and about how to dominate and win. And instead of being locked inside my doors, talking to my hostess and my guests, who I love, it wasn't that. It was that I was the wrong guy to stand there. And so that group that I went through, they really cut those shackles off of me. And I knew it. There was a day actually where I knew it. And then the head guy said it. And I thought, oh my God, like, is that for real? Can I agree that all these people agree with me that this is the right answer? And it was a very special day. It was a turning point for me. Yeah.
Right. And this is the group I met you in. This is a high-end mastermind group that was probably much more than any one of us could have afforded when we first started. Every member goes in and says, I can't afford to pay these high monthly fees, travel across the country every 3 times a year, pay for everything. I just can't afford it. And we took the plunge and we did it. And it was one of the best things I ever did, I know, for myself. And, locking ourselves in a room with 100 other very motivated restaurant owners for 3 days at a time, 3 times a year, and share everything, education, conversation, observation.
Absolutely.
And that totally changed my whole outlook on my sales, my life, all of that, my life, my work balance. It forced me to do things that I couldn't force myself to do prior to that. And it was amazing. So that's how we met, and we did this one. When did you join the group?
I'm going to say I joined it in 2010.
2010, okay.
When I started 2010, 2011. I think it was, And then, and I was in the group. When I shut down the restaurant, I pulled out because I didn't know if I was going to be 6 months or a year. I wasn't going to keep paying the dollars. And then I moved on from the group a little while ago. COVID was really the catalyst to that, and not being able to properly take advantage of that. Part of that is me. I know that there's people in that group that it just doesn't stop giving to them.
Right.
So I stuck with it as long as it made sense for me. And the reality is these are business decisions, and I will always love and respect the lessons I got out of that group for sure.
Likewise, I was in the group for 11 years, and I'm not in that group anymore, but I'm in other groups. I'm in other groups that push me, that motivate me, that educate me, that hold me accountable. And I've been in several groups since I left that group.
That's beautiful.
How important do you think it is for a restaurant owner to be in that kind of environment with your peers and whatever you want to call it, a mastermind, having a coach, having a business coach, having a mentor? How important was that for you? For you, probably your father was your mentor for a long time, right? Watching him run 22 restaurants. Oh my gosh, this is great. But then how did you transition into a mastermind group, or how do you view how important it is for mentors and how different was that from watching your father? Your father was obviously a success. 22 restaurants is no slouch at all.
Slouch, no. Right. No, yeah, I mean, absolutely. And actually, you know, his mentorship was in his vulnerability of sharing everything with me. So, you know, he gave me the greatest gift, which was his thoughts. There's one thing to be told about how to do inventory, but to really hear the inside thoughts of a person who's going through the ownership of that many restaurants, all of the problems and the opportunities, but all of it going on, that lesson was spectacular. The idea of taking on a platinum, you know, one of these groups is that, you know, I think there's three types of owner. I break it into three all the time because it's easy to count to three. Us Icelanders, you know, that English language thing. And so, you know, you get experts, people like yourself who are experts in your business. You're a chef. You've done the front of the house. You've been involved in it for so many years. You're an expert. Then there's guys who are in the entry position of brand new to this, uncertain of a lot of things, following the business, you know, the restaurant owner's book for dummies thing, and learning quickly, but painfully. And then there's somewhere in the middle. And I was in the middle because I've been around it a long time. I've been aware of it. I've been a part of conversation and all sorts of things. I'd helped him run the group a couple of times where he was in some moments. And so management is a comfortable space to dive in for me. Not to say that I'm an expert at it, and so I think it is absolutely key, because you're going to be doing one of things. You're either ultra true to yourself and beating yourself up at the worst of cases, or you're a master of lying to yourself that it's just the week. It's there was bad weather. There's you know, all of that. You know, a lot of guys live in that hole. And so becoming vulnerable, being honest about how good or bad you're doing, is the first greatest step you do as an owner, because now you're dealing with real information, right? And so looking in the mirror, you know, I beat myself up. I don't know if I've ever been happy in the sense of business, because there's always room to improve. And we are our mantra is continuous improvement, you know, consistency, world class. We are all about it, right?
100%.
And those three things are so hard. I mean, just get French fries to be the same fries every day for a month, right?
Yep.
And so, you know, that was the thing. And I think that there is just nobody that doesn't need that help. Even the best, you know, there are people in our group that we know who were part of the beginning phase, like yourself, who've had a ton of time, a lot of restaurant experience, multiple restaurants, and they still look to each other for support and guidance and advice. And every once in a while, over a bottle of wine at dinner, you break into a piece of your conversation that's maybe less flattering, and you get the best advice from your friend, which is usually they agree with what you really think you should do, right?
Yeah.
You usually, you know.
You said some awesome things here. I like master of lying to yourself. We become masters of lying to ourselves, and you know, that is so true. People say, I've done everything, or it's not my fault. It's this, it's that. I can't get good staff. That's all a lie. You can get good staff. Right. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but if you tell yourself, you're done. You're totally done. So master of lying to yourself. I'm going to use that. I took notes on that. That is fantastic.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I think the word that I love is vulnerability, because it's bigger than that, because that's why we did so well, Marcus, in that group, was that we got so personal about our own personal goals, about waking up on a sailboat, or if it was having a cabin somewhere, or taking a month to do the Alps, or whatever it was. We got to the point that we started talking about that. And then we really realized that real goals helped us get to where we are today. I run a restaurant. I don't need to go to my restaurant at all. That's how I run my restaurant. All of my systems are forced to be systems for 10 restaurants. Every leader in my team is told, I'm looking at a chef right now. And I said to him, how are you going to run this kitchen from home? And he went totally quiet on the call. And he goes, well, I've never heard that. And I said, well, what are you going to do when you take the month off to go to France to do that training at the greatest restaurant you've ever been to work with the best people? How are you going to do that without worrying about inventory and about ordering and about cleanliness and about people showing up on time? What did you do? Because I know today the manager of McDonald's is the one doing it. It's not the owner. The owner is teaching everything they know, giving it all away to his people, right?
All systems. It's all systems.
Totally.
Repetition of systems. Follow up on the systems. It's all follow up. A lot of people make a system and they never check on it. They never check on the system. But it's been in writing for 3 months.
Yeah.
Nobody's holding me accountable for doing the checklist, for doing things the proper way, for following up. You have to inspect what you expect. And this is like this with team training, with staff training. Training is not something you did, something you do consistently, almost on a daily basis, whether it's a simple role play, whether it's a little pop quiz. And even if you'd be surprised, like training is like, what is our phone number? What is our address?
Right. How do you transfer a call?
Right. How do you transfer a call? How do you answer the phone? How do you greet people at the door? And it's it's amazing. All right, so now there's so many things we're talking about here. So you're putting in a 2,500 square foot brewery. Do you know how to make beer at this? Do you know how to make beer at this point?
No. So here's what's amazing. Not only do I not know how to make beer, but I don't even know what a brewery really should be like. So I don't have a brewery yet. It's hard to find them because our market is kind of deregulated. So everybody's got a job out of all the people trying to start a brewery. And when we opened, by the way, that same year that I opened, 13 breweries opened. So keep in mind how crazy that's part of it is. But so I don't have a brewer, but I have a lot of people that have given me great advice. I've been to some breweries, gotten very intimate about conversation. Then I spoke to a supplier that I had a lot of faith in, and we designed it based on the square footage. We, custom heights. We had height issues and all that, and so we went ahead with that. And now what's happening is that in my city, there isn't really any regulations about how a brewery is to be built because they haven't built one in Manitoba in many, many, many moons. So now the regulations are an issue. Now they're talking about fire explosion issues. Instead of glass, I got to have a ceramic glass. I've got a maximum amount of square inches that I'm allowed for windows in, like all sorts of crazy things. Wastewater challenges. So that list happened. And so that's happening. But on the same time, I'm developing a new concept out of the bar brand. I'm taking that concept and I'm reworking it, getting rid of some of the challenges within that concept and coming up with a new brand. And I'm also trying to find a soul. And at the time, local is being really important. Local, growing vegetables, eating local, supporting local is really kind of starting. And so one of the problems in the community that we live in, like right now, if you look outside, there is not 1 inch on the earth that you can drive within 2 hours that isn't fully white covered in 2 feet of snow here. And so we have a long winter. We have a small growing season, so limited to very few products, mostly root vegetables, microgreens. That's about all we can get annually.
But dude, you must have local cheese. You must have local grains.
No, there's no local cheese because the Canadian cheese market is fully controlled. There's no artisan cheese. There's no artisan anything. Everything has to be government regulated. Very difficult to find that lovely, everything has to be pasteurized. You can't buy non-pasteurized anything in Canada.
Really?
You can't grow your own vegetables at your restaurant and serve them because you have to be licensed as a growing facility. And
wow.
Putting bees on your roof and making honey, that's a battle. And so, we're really struggling, and that's because we gave our government too much control here. And that's a separate conversation. But so it became a challenge to be local. We do have the best pork here in Manitoba. We have great chicken here. We have got great beef, although not very much of it. So most of it comes from Alberta or the US and Saskatchewan. And so, but we wanted to honor it. So what we did is we really wanted to honor it around the people of our history. And Manitoba has an interesting, colorful history that's never really been celebrated enough. And so we hunted, and for example, the guy that created the character of James Bond is from Winnipeg.
Very cool.
Yeah, he was a famous spy that went and worked with England during World War II. World War One, actually. I got to double check my notes, but he then taught the CIA or the FBI how to be spies. And his story is super cool. It's hard to find because it's a secret, but it's a beautiful story. And so it's another great thing. And then at the same time, my mother had just passed away, and my connection with my mom was beautiful. And she was really the strength in our household. She was the powerhouse of our family. Not to discredit my dad's a great guy, just she had a uniqueness to her. And when we lost her, it was a really neat reminder. I had a young daughter. It was very important to me. I come from Iceland, where I believe we really see ourselves as equals. And I love that community and that belief. And so there was another famous person that was part of Winnipeg, which was Nellie McClung, who fought for women's rights. And she was the one that took women from being property to being able to vote and become individuals. So think of the power of this woman standing in a room of a bunch of dudes with those white, gray, fake hair things. And they're all yelling at her, and she fought to win that case with her and her team. And I thought that is powerful. And the word, we've been working on food and all sorts. We're talking about braising food and all these things. And brazen came out of it. She was considered a brazen bitch.
Okay, so I was going to ask where the name came from.
Yeah, it came from many little places, but she kind of put the final nail into that beautiful box of ideas, and she really was. It's an interesting thing to have that connection locally, with my mom being as tough as she was as well. And so we hung on to that, and that's kind of where the word brazen comes from. Brazen Hall is our restaurant. Brazen Brewing Company is our brewery. And so that was the fuel that got that conversation going.
Great. So you created two companies, a brewery, brewer company, and separate, and then the restaurant.
I actually only created one, and originally it was Brazen Hall Kitchen and Brewery.
Okay.
And then the brewery has become such a going concern with such great opportunity, because our commitment to quality, I think, is one of our greatest strengths. And we've now separated the brand. It is still the same company, but it's now Brazen Brewing Company is the operating as for the brewery.
Okay.
And Brazen Hall is the operating for the restaurant.
Are you allowed to sell to other restaurants?
I do. I sell to all sorts of restaurants, all liquor stores, all government liquor stores, beer vendors, we call them here.
Beautiful.
The beer stores. And it's booming. It's really exciting. It's unfortunate we started canning on the day that COVID happened, but whatever. It's just another thing. Like we said, it's our challenge. We have to figure it out. There's nothing we can do except move forward, right?
Okay. So I want to back up to, you're building a 2,500 square foot brewery. You're getting equipment. You don't know how to brew beer. What is your plan to brew beer? What are you going to do? What's on your mind?
Right. So I'm going to hire a head brewer or brewmaster. I'm going to find somebody that aligns with our cultural beliefs. And so I start looking for that person. And that's a slow process. I also realize I'm in a community of people, lots of guys doing this, lots of people doing this. And so I don't want to go out and steal people. I want to be supportive of everybody. I want to make sure that I'm a part of their culture, because the brewery world is about being a brother sisterhood. It's about caring for each other, even when we compete at the store. That's when we're done. We just get it there and let the store work it out. And but until then, if somebody needs grain or somebody needs to borrow my equipment or I can help, that's what we do in our community. And I wasn't going to start that by stealing somebody's person.
That's such a great angle, and a lot of admiration for that. And you're right, the beer culture, you guys just work together, you have fun together. I mean, I've never seen, when I go to these beer conferences and beer festivals, all the brewers know each other. They're all friends with each other. They all work with each other. You go to a restaurant show and it's like chefs and stuff. We don't work well that. We have our friends that we click with, but we don't work like brewers do together. There's collaboration after collaboration on beer, and like you don't really see chefs collaborating. They do, but they really don't see like true collaborations and a lot more collaborations. So us chefs can learn a lot from the brew culture, the brew world. So all right,
that's true. Yeah.
How long did it take you to get a brewer picked out and up and going?
So in that same moment, we hire a group out of LA to do our design work. So we got to put together a story, a package to them. They fly out, they do the walkthrough because they're going to give us the design. And then we're going to move that to an architect locally. And then we're going to get the permits. We're going to hire a team. And we're doing that at the same time as we're developing a brewery. And so all these things are happening. And we also know that when we close the restaurant, it needs to die. It needs to be gone. You're right. So I'm thinking, okay, how long? I mean, I would like a full year, but a year is going to cost me about $300,000 to sit there, to hire my key, because I've already caught a couple of my key people. So that means I got to carry payrolls. I got to pay taxes, loans, all of the mortgage. I got to pay all that while my building sits empty. So we ended up being about 10 and a half months closed and then reopened. Our construction started and finished in 5 months. And what happened was I was struggling to trust. I had so much going on. I couldn't trust. And I had a problem with connecting. And what was scaring me was as moves changes. I was budgeting for this thing. I was spending real money, buying real stuff. My banquettes were almost $70,000. My bathrooms were $150,000. I mean, and I wasn't even putting in a kitchen. I was just cleaning it up, floors, ceilings, a little bit of equipment. So then the brewery piece is, okay, I've got the design, I'm good. It's been ordered, deposit sent, being built in Vancouver Island. And a good friend of mine who is part of one of the radio networks here, he says, well, his coworker's son is a brewer and he's considering moving. And so that's how I found our brewer. He was a brewer that had about 8 years experience in the brewing world and had done online courses, had done some updating, but was just a great human being and culturally a good fit and committed to quality. You could tell that he wasn't interested in drinking bad beer. And yeah, so that was great. We got him. So he's now a part of the program and we're feeling good. And he's starting to put some thought to how to build this brewery and all the little details. And the brewery came together easier than I thought. Because at the end of the day, it's like a kitchen. I mean, at the end of the day, there is enough information to tell us how to lay out a pretty good kitchen. It may not be personalized down to your expectation, but it'd be functional. And so we knew that we were also limited in space. And that was also going to be a challenge of how far could we go as a brewery in 2,500 square feet. We've since put 2 sea cans outside. We store a lot of stuff out there. And we're in the process of looking at a new location to expand the brewery and build a newer restaurant and another one. But we, the thing that I think is really important here is that the decision was made to kill the old brand because we knew it didn't have the legs to go.
So yeah, some people might think of the process, well, Brazen Hall at Roundtable, right? Some people might say, yeah, include that because it's been there for 2 decades, 3 decades, however long, right? 4 decades. Sure. Why not include that? But you decided to kill that and just totally move forward. Do people ever say anything to you about the old place? Do people miss it? What's the whole vibe with that?
Yeah, so we stayed closed for 10 months. When we opened, we had gilded, the building was wrapped outside. You could tell the building was gone. When we did the reveal, it was a new place. Outside was completely different. Everything changed, right? No additions, but the entire layout was totally different. The location of the front door was basically the same space. And it was enough for most people, but there were people that walked in when we opened, sat down and said, where's the menu? What is this? Where's the Roundtable menu? And I thought that was really something. I was actually pretty irritated by it. I was like, holy cow, you got to clean those glasses, man.
You spent them millions of dollars and they're looking for what you had.
Oh my God. And I'm telling you, it was black and white, the difference. Like you could not find one little detail. We did repurpose every piece of wood. We had a great friend of ours who was involved in helping teenage Indigenous kids in Canada. He built a house and had kids at high risk with him. And he was an NFL football player and a CFL football player in Winnipeg. Amazing friend. Kelly Butler's his name. and he did a charity to help children. And so he had a bunch of beautiful Indigenous kids from some of our northern reserves who were going through challenges, and he brought them to us when we were demoing. And they spent about 3, 4, 5 months with us, helping us demo. And we were, in the process of the beginning phases, we didn't bring crews in because we had some bodies and we had some time. So we were doing a lot of little work, and these boys played with us. So we got involved in that, and it was a part of our model because, that was another piece. How do you actually, saying you're local, what does that mean? You have a house in town? I mean, how do you be local? And so that's investing back into your community, being a part of it. And so we're really big on that. I mean, even in COVID days, we said, we will not make one penny during this cycle. We will invest everything we make, if we can, into our local community. And we have donated, we sent a $4,000 check just a few days ago over an event we did to 2 charities because we could. And so that was the other part about being sincere about who we were, like being real. And it wasn't the game. I know we want to make money. I know at the end of the day, we got to pay our bills. We all want to retire. We want a strategy to get so that, when we're at a certain point, this is still fun, right? And so we, in our model, we realized that the only way to ask people to be a part of your local business was to be honest about being local. And so that's what we worked really hard on. So it was a big part of what we did. And it was important because there's lots of things going on, lots of restaurants out there. And, so it was a part of our authenticity and about what we're about. So that whole transition from Roundtable to Brazen Hall was key. And just to be clear, I will be almost triple the sales of the Roundtable's best numbers ever.
I wanted to talk about that. I definitely want to talk about that. So while we're talking about that, so it takes 10 months to open up. What is your first year like sales wise, as far as what you're expecting? The overall community, was the community expecting this? Did they come? Let's talk about the first year sales.
Yeah. So not a lot of craft brewery type places, not a lot of craft bars in the market. It's kind of coming. We're seeing Western Canadian beers arriving, brands that people are starting to connect with, new flavors. So it's really early. And I remember even when we started, the IPA on tap was interesting how slow it moved. Now it's not that slow. And it took 2 years and the market exploded, right?
How many IPA taps do you have now? I mean,
we commit to 10 taps in the building, all ours, and at least half of them have got some hops in them. I mean, it could be a pale ale, it could be a hopped up Belgian, who knows, right?
Right.
We did a really neat smash just a little while. We were testing. I'm in the process of opening up a malting facility out here. So we were bringing in some product from actually the Carolinas to do some testing on the plant that we were looking at. And so we made a smash with this product out of Carolina, and it was awesome, super fun. It was the hops that made it playful, It's always a good time.
Great.
But so it's keep going.
So sales, your first year, did it meet your expectations? Where were you?
Yeah, we predicted 3.6 million in our first year, and we did 3.58.
Okay.
And it was on the nut, and we based it on a minimum of $26 per head, which grew to $31. It didn't right away. It was right around $26, which was our model. And we knew that we had 200 seats. So that's what we were. We were 200 seats. Patio was not ready yet. It was going to happen later. We were running out of money as usual, construction. I did the general. So I hired everybody. I almost killed myself. My blood pressure went from 120/80 to 180/120. Like it was out of control, right?
Yeah.
Like I almost killed myself. And so we went through that process, but we also became experts in our business by torturing ourselves. I'm not sure I recommend that, but anyways, so business gets to 3.6. All of that business was in the restaurant because we were only making beer for ourselves.
Oh, wow.
At that time.
Okay. All right.
Right.
What was your best year? What was your best year at Roundtable?
I think it just hit 2.5.
So you're already $1 million ahead.
$1 million ahead. And I was at 5% at the Roundtable, and I'm working on 14, hitting 9.5, 10.5s in my first year. So not only have I doubled grown the sales by 100 or $1 million, I'm also trying to get 3 times the profits out of this thing. because of the design. And the biggest thing was all the seats are full. The price point is approachable by more people, and beef, the cost of beef is not in my way. Those three things were massive in the ability to be profitable by bringing a more broader menu, by focusing on more playfulness, creativity, all of that, right? Beer accounted for 30% of our sales.
Wonderful.
In total.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and the total of beer and liquor was around 42%. So another 12% in wine and cocktails overall. And and then food was sitting at 58. Now food is around 65%. And that's probably because nobody's in the building. We've done so much takeout, right, for this whole season.
Right.
And we were already, so then the second year we were 3.9, and then and then the third year we saw a 60% growth, because what was happening was we were coming into Christmas doing 120s, 130s in the weeks. Jan, Feb had been one of our better quarters, and we were going to be $100,000 weeks. So we were basically really close to that 80, 100 grand a week, which gets you in the $4.5, $5 million category pretty quick. And so we saw that already there. We already fixed our summer business had shifted. We had a patio that was going to open. So we knew, and our $26 was going to 31. And so we had all these things. And then we were about to launch our brewery, which was worth between $5 and $1 million in its first year on top of the restaurant. And
it's wholesale sales, you mean?
That's right. Yeah.
That's wow.
And so this was about to explode in that year that COVID hit us, unfortunately. That March, actually, I was at my meeting with my group in Florida. And then I did my birthday, March 5th, in Tampa Bay at this beautiful little cigar / mojito bar. And then we were all sitting there staring at the gun, because we realized COVID was about to beat us up pretty bad. And I remember looking at each other saying, wow, the timing is shocking, because I had just put another $250,000 of brewing equipment into my brewery. I had bought my own canning line. We were ready to go. We were serious. We were going to be smaller batch, artisan, really focused on local palate, and then the playfulness would come. And what happened was, instead of doing that, we shut down. We didn't spend the money on the marketing piece, which was to really rebrand that and really dial into can design and all that. We kind of launched in a way that was fine, but not as exciting as we'd hoped. And so it was a very interesting time to see that. Now, saying that, whatever, the thing is that we are now, right now, we're running at 50%. And as of yesterday in our market, we were at 100%, but we were still doing, 60, back up into the 60s. And we haven't even opened yet, right?
Okay, great. You're planning to reopen. So now, wow, you're going to push $5 million.
Yeah.
Wow. So doubling what the Roundtable ever did. You got to be feeling really good about your decisions. Really good.
Yeah. I mean, there were a couple of moments in the process where, you're always questioning yourself, but we realized, and we've been in maybe 35, 40 food competitions. We are the dominant burger restaurant in Winnipeg. We're not even a hamburger restaurant, but the commitment to quality and all those things were key to us. So we won the Burger Week here in Winnipeg. It's 150 restaurants that compete. We've won it 3 years in a row.
Beautiful. Congrats.
Yeah. And even this year we came in fourth, and we were, I think we came in fourth and fifth in the nation in that grouping. And then we won another award nationally as the 21st best hamburger restaurant in Canada, deluxe burgers.
Congrats.
We have over 30 food awards we've won, from gold to silver to bronze, in all sorts of categories. And that was part of that, was to make sure that we were committed to doing real food, right? Great. And there was,
sounds like you can easily one of the most awarded brew pubs in the country.
Yeah, I mean, where we haven't really spent a lot of time on is on the brewery side, because we only brewed for ourselves. So we have yet to get better at that and to do that but it is a great way to create marketing. It's a great way. Word of mouth is amazing.
Let's talk about marketing for a moment.
For sure.
This is a really long interview, not really long, but you're saying a ton of great stuff. So I really don't want to cut this off. So if we're going to just stay with us here, because we're going to get into marketing next. Sure. I remember you used to do gift cards in what, Costco or Sam's Club. Do you do that anymore?
No, I don't. If I'm discounting, it's to give to a charity. I do not do that anymore. Now, saying that, that's a very interesting conversation, because one of the luxuries of that group that we were involved was that they really gave you ways to get out of the hole. And because most of us showed up there with oh boy, I'm in trouble. Right. Yeah. Most of the guys showing up weren't showing up in their first 5 years saying, yeah, I got a great concept. Yeah, it'll make me better. Most of us were panicking, right? And so the marketing techniques that I used at the Roundtable, and even then, the difference between a sub shop, or shop doing sandwiches, and a pizza restaurant and a steakhouse, they all have different demographics, different people responding differently. We decided that we would not do any marketing in the sense of classic media, so radio and all that. And then we did later add in some branding. So we did add that because we also wanted to work on expanding the brand. And so we've done some branding work. Most of what we do is charity-based and or just playfulness.
Okay, love it.
Right? We were full every single day of the week, always. So the difference was, did it start at 4:30 or 6, and did it last till 8 o'clock or 10? And so on a Tuesday, we'd have a lineup for 20 minutes for 10 people waiting to get in. And on a Friday, we'd have an hour and a half wait. People would be phoning us to find out when they can get in.
And say how many seats you are again? How many seats are you?
I'm 200.
200 seats. Okay.
Yeah.
So on a Tuesday night, 200 seats, you got people waiting.
I got people on every single night. I got people waiting.
Beautiful.
So when that happens, when you're lucky enough to pull that, whatever it is you've done, the nuances of who you are and all your personal pieces and all that comes together. When you get to that point, now it is about, obviously, more focus for me was on quality of service, quality of product, all of that, cleanliness and so on. So we spent our money in developing our people, learning how to become culture focused and what that meant, because that's a buzzword that is way harder to tackle than it is to say it. Culture is a monster. And so we've been on that one heavily. We have a culture. We hire on 3 very key pieces. And that's a whole separate conversation. I'll quickly say it. It's attitude, it's work ethic, it's teamwork. We hire on those 3 things. We don't hire anybody with a resume. Can't walk in and get hired. You got to go to our website. You got to fill out the 45-minute document we expect you to fill out before we talk to you.
Wow.
If you don't want to put that time in, we don't need to talk to you. That's
it. Okay.
Yeah. We're really tough. We will screen through 100 people to talk to 3, and we'll let most of that process do a piece of that. We're always updating it and learning it, but it has been extremely important because, Pals, was it Pals Fast Food or something?
Pals in Tennessee.
Yeah, they had the same attitude. They really understood the belief that everybody, there are a lot of great people out there. It doesn't matter if they're 13 or 65 or 85, it doesn't matter.
Right.
And it's really about how do you bring it out of them? What do you do for them to bring it out of them? Versus
exactly.
Why aren't they doing it our way,
Right.
And so we do hire on attitude first, because we do know that we're not brain surgeons. There's nothing very special that I do. Anybody can do it. And so it's really about finding that attitude, right? And then the little
100%. And work with them, right? work with them.
That's right.
People have the attitude. That's fantastic. You can teach them everything else.
Absolutely. So marketing for us was more about the internal guest experience. We were pretty thin on talent. Chris Stepansky is my partner. He's the operations manager. He's the restaurateur in my group. He's the guy that's been managing restaurants for 20 years. This is his thing. He's youthful. He understands what it is to be hip and fun. He's not an old fuddy-duddy wondering why nobody wants tomato juice with their liver and onions, right? And so he really was the one that, the biggest thing for him was to take my background, which, so working for Auto Trader in Canada, I had an amazing experience. I grew a lot. And a lot of it was the corporate piece, was the understanding of HR, the purpose of HR. It's not a policing network. And that's the mistake a lot of us believe. HR is there to make sure staff don't steal from us. Well, hire people that don't steal, and that's much easier to do, right? And so when you look at human resources, you're talking about the best resource of your entire business. So we are so dialed into that's the conversation we have all the time is what are we doing right and wrong to, offer this? And we know we're making mistakes. We know that our personalities aren't specifically designed for certain things. I personally don't know the names of the staff. I do not speak to anybody that isn't executive level so that I don't confuse the messaging. I only talk to my leaders, and they then disseminate through and they take the message on. They're measured on those things, but that way they're given the support they need to develop their people. It's 80 people, right? This isn't 12 of us, it's 80 of us in this building.
This is so important what you just said. People walk around and they don't follow the chain of command, and including the person on the top. So they'll go around, manage by wandering around, say something to somebody. Then all of a sudden the supervisor has no idea. Well, the boss told me this, or the boss never told me, and the boss is away somewhere. And it's like then it creates a whole uncertainty, lack of organization. And I'm a huge advocate for every business, every operation should have their chain of command posted. So even the new hires, the lower people, need to know where to go first. Like, where do I go? Here's who I'm going to. And why would I go to somebody who's on a totally different chain in the dining room and I'm in the kitchen? They're not really my chain of command. They might be somewhere in both, but go up your chain of command, and the chain of command at the top needs to go down in the opposite direction.
Absolutely. No differently than when a boss boy runs over, or one of my support staff run over and say, ask me a question, and I know the answer, but they're not following the process. So I say to them, you need to ask the right person. And they look at me like, that's stupid. Now, if it was, hey, how do you do CPR? I got to save a life. Obviously, I'm all over it.
Right.
But when it's, hey, where do we find the toilet paper?
Where's the toilet paper? Where's the toilet paper? Yep.
That's right.
But what levels are you supposed to be on? 100%. I agree with you. And I'm the same way. I'm the same exact way. Don't come to me to change a keg of beer. Don't come to me to. That's not my.
Right. I mean, worst case, if there's nothing there, absolutely, the door is always open. But I also explain to them why I say that. Is that, listen, it's very important that if you don't know where the toilet paper is, it's possible toilet paper isn't where it's supposed to be. It's possible we're out of it. So the people that need to be involved in this little funny conversation are the leader on the floor who knows where it is. And then secondly is if it's not there, then it goes to the chef who does the ordering, and we find out an emergency solution if that's the case. And so if Kristjan just goes, blah, 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 that's not helping anybody.
It's not helping anybody. Yep.
Right.
I
think that's what
I'm a huge fan.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of the two-process job description. I hand them their job description, and then I hand them my job description. Anytime you want to trade, we can do that. But it requires money. It requires stressing. It requires taking a phone call at 2 a.m., in case of doors, whatever.
Yeah,
right.
That's right.
My job requires 6 a.m. in the office, making sure everybody gets their paycheck every single week. I haven't missed a week in 18 years. This is my job description. Your job description. You do your job. If you don't do your job and I have to do it, then I can't do my job. And then everybody loses out on the team.
Right. And if you have to do their job, odds are you probably don't do it as well as they do anyways, because it's not your specialty anymore. Here's the other thing that's an important thing for a restaurant owner is that when I walk into the restaurant, I've already seen 10 or 20 things. I mean, I am a hawkeye about light bulb or dust or clutter in a corner. Like, I'm joking. I say this with all respect, but there are certain types of restaurants where you walk in, there's a table, it's got old newspapers, it's got a phone, the kid's doing, the owner's kid is there playing a video game, somebody's got a laptop. It's very cluttersome and messy.
Yep.
So my bar top is massive. My bar seats almost 40 people. And I don't want anything on my bar top
It's
except for
easy to happen.
POS systems. Yeah.
It's easy to happen.
Okay.
40 seats. Yeah.
Right. Then you sit in every seat in your restaurant and you say, what am I seeing? And so I look at anywhere from the hostess stand, which is always a bit of an issue because they've got cleaning product and, blah, blah, blah. The bar top is a quick place that drops an old rag or whatever. And so you say to yourself, what are people seeing? I drove by a really cool brewery, a good friend of mine. But as I drove by, the windows had clutter pushed up against them. That the beauty of the window would have been lost. The organizational attractiveness of the place was gone. It looked like they could be going out of business. And so that was really important to recognize it. But I don't walk in and yell at the hostess or the supervisor. I'll send a friendly response at a timely time. And I won't do it at 9 o'clock at night. It'll be sent tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. because that person's gone home anyways. And so unless it's an emergency, they'll deal with it. They'll know it's not being handled. They'll check why the checklists aren't being followed, whatever the process is, right? And so, so as we get here, and it's important is, I love this conversation because when I think of this experience we went through, the things we learned was how to recognize that a brand had legs or not, how to do that, and to recognize where in your process are you, can you recover your brand or not? And there's a point where you can't, where it is over branded a certain way, whatever it might be, right? And so at that moment, then it's a financial discussion about how do we move forward, or do we sell and move on, or do we start all over somewhere else, right? And so that walking through that process happened. We did that. Then it was the financial viability, to be able to do something like this and to run the numbers to make sure it made sense. We did that. And then it was, can I get the best people? And one thing that my father always said was, the average price for a lawyer today, let's call it $150 for the average. And the very best to get you out of prison, if you're a terrible president or a movie star who's done something wrong, that could be $1,000 an hour. We're not in that category. So from $150 to $400 for 50 hours a year, who cares? Get the best lawyer. Budget for it, right?
Yes.
Don't take the cousin that's your friend. Don't, go to the best. And so we have great designers in Manitoba. Beautiful work, architectural work. Some of the buildings here are amazing, things that are going on. But we don't have a lot of new restaurants, so there wasn't a lot of experience in converting emotion into unique, classic, kind of whatever it is that we wanted. So we went to a group out of LA that did that for us, and they were spectacular, and they did a great job for us. And that was a very important phase to spend the money on that. And also to recognize that I could give you the layout that I knew would work, the certain elements of my business, but they were the ones that put the sparkle on. And then what I found was, as I generaled it, I had a design on a wall, but it didn't work with the local wood I had. They wanted older wood. I'm using, aspen or whatever. I was able to then get personal about it and to recognize that, we wanted it to look aged, or we didn't, or whatever. And we went that route with the guidelines of what we were given. But it was really exciting to get personal. And so we did that. And then it was the scariest part is when we do that transition, even though you have a bit of an idea of your menu and you kind of have an idea what your place is going to look like, you really don't know what your real final finished offer is. And it took us 6 months before we felt like we were starting to feel like Brazen Hall. And then now when I look at who we are, I'm really excited about what we are, and I feel like I have the direction I need to go. But it took me 2-3 years to really dial in our concept.
That's so important. That is so important. I mean, it's just, people just rush things, and you have to be open to evolving, small evolutions. It's like flying an airplane. Just keep it on course, keep it on course, keep it on course, and you'll get to the destination. And right. I mean, you're saying some really amazing. I wish I had some sound effects going on here, because you're doing some like a pan sizzling or something, because there's a lot of sizzle in this. There's a lot of sizzle in this interview. So a lot of really great content. So Kristjan, how can people find you online and in your brick and mortar?
Right on. So we are 800 Pembina in Winnipeg, Manitoba. We are 2 hours north of Grand Forks, North Dakota, as our location. We're 1 million people here. We are brazenhall.ca or brazenbrewing.ca. And you can always find me there. And I'm Kristjan at brazenhall.ca. Kristjan, Kristjan. You're welcome to say hello anytime. and come by for a beer. Yeah, we're excited. We're really starting to work on the viability of tripling the size of our brew house, and then how do we do that? That's a big undertaking, and so those are some fun things we're working on now. And we've got 2 smaller concept restaurants in the same brand that we're working on. So we're excited about the future for sure.
Cool. Now, how about on Instagram? How can people find the business on Instagram?
Yeah, Brazen Hall is on Instagram, Brazen Brewing and Brazen Hall. So Brazen Hall, just hashtag Brazen Hall and Brazen Brewing. They're all there. And same with Facebook and all the others. I'm certain.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And we're having fun. And this has been really great.
This has been amazing, Kristjan. This has really been amazing. And hopefully we can get up there at some point. And are you heading off to any conferences in New York at all, in the US at all? Any conferences?
Well, I've been working on a year, you're right. And now that the borders are open and we're able to get going, it's really awesome. I unfortunately, actually, today's an interesting day. So to put this in perspective of the opportunities and challenges, I'm fighting cancer. So my hair is starting to fall out today. If you can believe that.
Oh, wow.
So in this process, I'm in my second wave of chemo, good diagnosis. I'm okay. It's a process you go through. As a Brazen member, hey, bring on the fight. I'm fine with it. So I can't travel for the next till probably June.
Okay.
And so I've had to back off on that, but I've been hunting, and even just sitting talking to you, you've helped me so much. You reminded me of the things that our core beliefs and how to stick to them. And you got me excited again. So
awesome.
It's been fabulous talking to you, Mark.
I was going to try to twist your arm and say, come meet us in Vegas at the bar and nightclub show.
Oh, I wanted to go so bad because it's right around my birthday. So it's a party, like the fun. And I don't know if you know this, but I like to have fun. so yeah, but when this whole mess is over, for sure, I'm going to be traveling. I've got family in Boston. I'm going to get out and visit my friends, and I hope to come by you for sure.
Awesome, Kristjan. This has been a pleasure. Best of luck to you. Best of luck with the reopening and everything in the near future. It was great talking to you, and let's definitely talk again.
Absolutely. A total pleasure. Thanks again.